Well, welcome everyone to All Souls Interfaith Gathering. My name is Sue Dixon, and I am chair of the board here at All Souls as a volunteer, and I work at Shelburne Farms. And we're really pleased to see you all here with your curiosity hats on for the second in our 2015 conversation series with Fran Stoddard, focused on the power of curiosity. We have, this series is, I think this is our fifth year or
Fourth or fifth.
Fourth or fifth year.
I really should look it up. I meant to.
And we do it every spring. And if you're curious about spring and whether or not it is spring, I will say that the maple sap is flowing. We talked about that with the folks from Wake Robin, and up at Shelburne Farms we were boiling today. So it is spring. And this is our the second in a two-part series that is hosted by Shelburne Farms, All Souls Interfaith Gathering, Shelburne Museum, and the Pearson Library. So it's really a community collaboration. We're so grateful to you, Fran Stoddard, for being here as our host, and for our two guests today, Linda Wellings and Rob Mermin. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, these talks started when they started about 4 years ago. It was All Souls, Shelburne Museum, and Shelburne Farms. And we looked at the themes of art, nature, and spirituality. And the library joined on last year, maybe even the year before. So certainly inquiry is part of this too. So it's exciting how do we go deep? How do we talk about some things and ideas in a deeper way than we usually do on our day-to-day activities with people who are doing very interesting things. So I'm really honored to be a part of these conversations, and that impetus from Shelburne Farms, Shelburne Museum, All Souls Interfaith Gathering, and the Shelburne Museum, the Shelburne Library. Also, I'd like to thank RETN, who has been here since the beginning taping these, and you can actually go online and find other conversations from this series from back 4 or 5 years that we should know what it is. Today, we have two facilitators of wonder, although only one of them kind of semi-officially claims that title. They have been able to sustain their sense of childhood wonder and curiosity in their own lives and have given it back to children and adults, in very rich and vibrant ways. As with the other March Conversation series this year, they never met until today. So there's a committee that puts together these conversations, and that is a really wonderful collaboration. And I think kind of like a good dinner, they have brought together these diverse folks to talk about interesting ideas in different ways. So I have no doubt that we will. I'm going to introduce you to Linda and Rob a little bit, and we'll get our conversation underway. Linda Wellings considers herself blessed to have spent the second half of her working life at Shelburne Farms. Earlier, she spent 20 years teaching preschool, kindergarten, 2nd and 5th grade in Ohio. With those years of teaching experience and a Master's of Arts in Education, she came to the farm as a volunteer first, and grew into her current position as the Director of School Programs, although she prefers that title of Facilitator of Wonder, which I hear indeed she is. Linda's favorite program to facilitate is with the King Street preschoolers who visit the farm most Fridays. She also loves working with educators to share with them all the opportunities of using the natural and agricultural worlds in an extension of their classrooms. She is the co-author of this book, Cultivating Joy and Wonder. This is just chock full of great stuff, educating for sustainability in early childhood through nature, food, and community. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then Rob Mermin is trained as a classical mime with Etienne Decroix and Marcel Marceau, and has performed in European and American circus, theater, TV, and film for 40 years. He is an author, director, university lecturer, former dean of Ringling Brothers Clown College, and founder of the award-winning international company, Circus Smirkus, and we have the ED here today as well, which is great. Rob's awards include the Copenhagen Gold Clown, a Bessie Award, Best Director's Prize at a Soviet Union's International Festival, the Lund Family Center's It Takes a Village Award, the Vermont Arts Council Award of Merit, the 2008 Governor's Award for Excellence, which is Vermont's highest honor for an artist. His current personal appearances include feats of wonder and magic, lecture presentations on humor, film, circuses, and mime. So we're going to have a good time today.
Well, you know, about that Governor's Award, I could tell you a story about that. I had the honor of throwing water on the governor. It was great fun. And you better watch out, Fran. I've got a glass.
But she has a picture.
So,
Yes.
to put this, I do have the picture. To put this in context, last week, we well established, because this is a series, this is the second of the series, and we really established that curiosity is absolutely essential for innovation, for creativity, for growth. Today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how to keep that alive. How do we form the right questions? Because that's a big piece of this. But I'm gonna kind of warm us up with something that I did ask last week, and otherwise the questions will change. With how has curiosity led to something great? Or how did curiosity become a driving factor in taking you in a new direction? Rob, you want to start?
Okay. How did curiosity lead me to something great? I could think back to when I was 9 years old. I had an experience that opened up my eyes and led to something else. I was 9 years old, and I decided to take one Saturday afternoon off. And those were the days we all remember when we were not being sent off somewhere by the parents. We had the day to ourselves, Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning, right?
Right.
Remember those days?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. So I decided
Go do something.
to walk down, it was about a half mile away, and that's a long way for a little kid, right? And I was very curious about where clouds go, clouds in the sky. And I decided that I was going to pack myself a little lunch, peanut butter jelly sandwich in a brown paper bag and some potato chips and a chocolate chip cookie. And I was going to walk up the hill, which I did, and I waited for the right Saturday afternoon, which was puffy white cumulus clouds, right? And I was going to wait until over the horizon came one single cloud, not one that's connected to anything else, but I was going to follow that one single cloud to wherever it took me until noon. Then I'd see where I was, observe the world, and retrace myself back to get home in time for dinner. Good plan, right? I was curious to where clouds go when they go over the horizon. So I was going to follow this cloud, and I waited maybe about 20 minutes for the right little cloud coming over the horizon, a little puffy cloud. And there it was. I thought, that was it. And I waited until it came right above me. I said, okay, cloud, let's go. And I started walking down the hill. And about 3 minutes later, I looked up, and where's the cloud? Whoa, 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 whoa. And I started running after the cloud. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Bye. There it went. And so this opened my eyes to the fact that I was no longer the center of the world.
That was
The world
heavy.
was bigger than I was. And that led to something else that was related to something else that happened in the fourth grade, which led to greatness.
Okay, but you didn't get lost.
I didn't get lost, no. So I basically went back to that hill and had my lunch and watched the ants in the grass for the rest of the day.
What a great day.
Yeah.
What a deep thinker
Linda,
for a 9-year-old.
right.
Yeah, well,
Right.
don't you wonder where clouds go?
Did anything come up for you, Linda?
Oh, I never chased clouds, just looked at them. But as I thought of that question, Fran, you had kind of prepped us. I think that's why I'm in Vermont. I was curious about Vermont. I don't know why, but I had lived in Ohio, grew up in Pittsburgh. taught in Ohio. But for some reason, I always sent my envelope every year to the Nature Conservancy and dedicated it to Vermont. I don't know why. I had no intention of moving here. But as things turned out, I was curious. What happens in Vermont? Best thing ever that I followed that curiosity and came here.
All right.
Because whenever I leave, I'm always so happy to come back to Vermont.
And we are the beneficiaries.
I don't know about that, but thanks.
So, according to Warren Berger, who wrote a book called The Art of the Question, he says that questioning peaks at age 4 or 5. That's the top, and especially girls. I think it's 4-year-old girls, more questions than any other human, and then it begins to decline. What can be done to maintain that sense of curiosity that some may drill right out of us?
Was he referring to the fact that kids always ask why?
That's what I was thinking.
Well,
why?
yeah.
Why?
A lot of whys and other questions.
Well, that's the beginning of being a scientist, isn't it? Why? How? How do things work? Why do they do this and that?
But then something happens.
Then I'm afraid we kind of start conditioning kids to think there's an answer, one answer, and that as they go to more formalized schooling, what's the answer? And I didn't want to go down this road, Fran, about formal education, but just thinking, kids, I thought of why right away too, Rob, that they're always asking why. Or when they're just learning how to eat or dress themselves, it might not be verbal, but you can see they're trying to figure out, how's this coat go on? Where do your socks go? And so those questionings continue as they learn the world around them. And I think it would continue to expand, except we as adults start narrowing it down for them. No, there's one way to put your coat on, or one way to do this.
So how do you keep like wonder and curiosity alive? You've been in the business of doing that.
Well,
I mean, you both are in a sense.
Start a circus.
Start a circus. Well, that was part of trying to keep myself young as I was growing older. But when I think about being a kid, asking why, I don't have the sense, well, from my own experience, I don't have the sense that I wanted to know really why anything in detail, in factual detail, but I wanted to have an experience of something. You know, if a rainbow comes across the horizon, I didn't think immediately, well, why is it red and green and blue? It was just the experience of it first. And curious to what is that? And why is it there in the sky? But I didn't need to know the scientific facts of why the red wavelength is this and the blue wavelength is... That's different kind of schooling.
And I've found with young children, they'll name things. And with early childhood educators, they're, well, I can't take my kids out for that nature walk because I don't know the name of that worm or that butterfly or that tree. You don't have to, because kids will name it. You know, oh, that's the grandfather tree. Oh, that's the ship log. And so they'll name those things or identify, like you said, the rainbow or whatever. I have a quote for you, Frank.
Okay.
That I wrote down. Rachel Carson. If a child is to keep alive his/her inborn sense of wonder, she or he needs the companionship of at least one adult, Rob or me or anybody in this room, at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with him or her the joy, excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. So for me, the greatest joy is being in the woods, and we have a plan, oh, we want to go here or there. We barely get in the woods because something cool happens. Ooh, the guts of a mouse are there. Oh, we'll never get any further than that because we want to look at that and try to figure out, wow, what happened, who ate it? Oh, let's be that predator, let's be the mouse. And so it's so easy then for me just to play and enjoy. I had somebody once at the farm long ago tell me, you're a little bit like Peter Pan. You don't get old, you just keep liking to play, you know? And so I think as adults, if we can show joy, whether it's tricks or just, that is really cool worm. I can't believe it stretched that far. You know, that's the best gift that we can give to kids, not identifying the word, labeling it, naming it, but just getting psyched about it.
Does that labeling come later? Is that important? No.
I think it is important, but they also can label it as they want, but I would say later.
I would say if the kid is interested in something, they'll find out what the labeling is. They'll find out the facts. But I tend to think that some of the best teachers I've had did not know, either they didn't know all the answers or they wouldn't give us the answers. We'd have to find out. And play took a lot of...
So what's coming to mind when you say that?
4th grade.
That 4th grade.
That was a big year for you.
It was for some reason. I remember we had those were the days, maybe they still are, when we have one teacher for the whole day, right? Mm-hmm. So that teacher had to teach math and science and history and geography and everything. And I remember we had a science project to do for 1 month, and we could choose our own subject. So I was fascinated in a lot of things. I wanted to find out about the senses. So I went to the teacher and I said, is it okay if for 1 week I blindfold myself so I see what it's like to be blind? And then the week after that, is it okay if I plug up my ears so I can find out what it's like to be deaf? And then the week after that, and she stopped me right away. So, don't think that's a good idea. So the third idea I had was the word ambidexterity. Because, when you're 4th grade, you like long words, even if you don't know what they mean. And I was also very curious to why I'm right-handed, why my left hand couldn't do what my right hand could do. We have 2 hands, and what's the imbalance going on here? How come? So I decided to do a section on ambidexterity. So I said, teacher, is it okay if I do everything with my left hand for at least a week? She said, okay, I'll allow that. So have you ever tried to brush your teeth with your left hand? You get toothpaste all over your nose. But I found out something very interesting during that week. Because I was so curious about the left hand and the right hand, I discovered that it wasn't that the left hand was not as good as the right hand, it had a different function. I discovered that, like playing baseball, if I was going to play right-handed, I was very good at place hitting to left field, right field, wherever I wanted to. But if I wanted to power hit and try to hit a home run, I would switch to lefty. And somehow I was stronger left-handed. And the same thing when you think about catching, I would throw with my right hand, but I was much better catching with the left hand. So the hands had different functions, which is what I learned. I was so curious about that. And that led to the very important fact of juggling. Because then I said, okay, if each hand has its own function, what can they do together equally? And so I taught myself to juggle, which led to circus, which led to on and on and on.
Where you are right now. I'm glad I wasn't your teacher. I would have said, yeah, I want to see what would happen if you blindfolded yourself. That's a good thing we didn't meet in 4th grade. I do remember, though, teaching 5th grade, and I had children who I'd had in kindergarten, and they were like, really, Miss W? We're in 5th grade now. Get off your soapbox. We're fine. It was like such a cultural shock to have those children later on. They taught me a few things by that age.
Back to, okay, having an adult who's curious helps cultivate joy and wonder. What are some of the few other key elements of cultivating joy and wonder, this title of your book?
Well, we've been doing, some of my peers are here, a lot of work at the farm. I love our little preschool room in the farm barn. I love that room. But 3 or 4 years ago, we decided, well, we're telling classroom teachers, get outside, get outside. So we're there, well, we better get outside. So we started an outdoor classroom, and it blew me away, the impact, not having walls, having children in a natural setting. It brings me back to those days you talked about. We were in the woods all day long, and you came home for dinner, maybe, or you didn't get dinner. But David Sobel, a professor at Antioch, New England, said, how can kids climb up the wall or drive up the wall when there are no walls? And behavior problems diminish. Creativity just escalates because there are so many things to explore, manipulate, try to figure out, what can we do with this? What is this? And so it just brings about such an increase in that joy and wonder. Not last summer, the summer before, for 2 weeks in a row, I had the pleasure of teaching outside. up in our outdoor classroom, hot, sweaty, rain, whatever, we were out there. And then the next week we went back into my beloved classroom that I love, and I was depressed. And I was astounded. Well, Linda, you love this room, you know this room, but I yearned to be outside. And this is happening to me as an adult. It just made me curious. What does it do to kids then? When you lose that empowering feeling of being outside? So I just feel giving kids, urging kids to be outside, to have schools, and we work with a lot of preschool teachers who, yeah, we've got to be outside more. King Street, it's tough. They're right in the city, but they'll go for hikes around the block or to parks. But just being outside, exploring the natural world has really opened my eyes to how that can increase a child's curiosity, wonder, joy.
Okay.
Yeah, I found that when we give too much structured play to kids, they're not learning the same way. Is that play should be unstructured, and that's where kids discover things. And that's where, if you let a kid out by himself for a whole afternoon without telling him what to do, they'll discover what fascinates them. Mm-hmm. And that's where the education comes from, and that's where the curiosity comes out.
But some educators, many parents, feel this is very risky. Can't send kids out, on their own all the time. Can't.
But we all survived. Look around this room. We may.
Well,
I know.
I mean, how do you
issues.
help teachers get over that need to control, fear of the risk taking?
Well, it's getting over the fear and the risk. Like you just said, we hear so often, don't do this, don't run, don't climb, don't jump, don't scream, all of these things. Like at the circus, we tell them, yes, jump, yes, fly, yes, run and scream, yes, flip, do all these things because they can. And they'll learn from that instead of being told not to do things all the time. Yeah. You have to get over that fear.
Well, and we've worked with a pediatric nurse, Jean Coffey, who moved, though she used to teach at UVM and practice in Essex, but she's moved over to New Hampshire. And she really made me feel a lot calmer. Oh, Jean, wonder if we're climbing a tree or we're swinging on our grapevine and somebody falls and breaks an arm. Linda, I don't want anybody to break an arm or a leg, but we can fix that. But childhood obesity leads to heart disease, diabetes. That is much harder to take care of as kids grow into the adults. Studies show now that many of the kids today will not live to the age we're living because of practices of sitting on the couch, TV, videos. So I feel we need to educate parents and educators and remind them too of when they were outside. And there's a strong movement across the country, across the world. Mm-hmm. My coworker was just telling me about an article she read at Antioch on the Switzerland forest kindergartens, and they're public, and you can go to the forest kindergarten or you can go to a normal in the class. So many people are choosing the forest, and pediatricians are seeing great improvements in health. So I think we have to re-educate our adults to the huge benefits of being out there.
Well, this is one of the things that attracted me to circus life in the first place. I was 19 when I ran off to the circus, but I was so fascinated by the children of professional circus artists, artists who've been in the circus for 5-6 generations. So the kids are growing up working with their siblings, working with their parents, working with their aunts and uncles and grandparents. And a little 10-year-old kid, I remember this kid, he was from Italy. He could speak 3 languages already. He knew geography, not by going to school, but by traveling with his family. And then I worked with so many of these old-time circus people who were in the 60s and 70s and 80s who were still working, and work for them was play. You know, a juggler would not stop when he's 30 years old because he has a great act. He would always be trying to find something new to put into the act. So work was a sense of play. And I think that's what keeps circus people so young all the time, is that they're always adding on to their work, which is play for them.
I just want to continue with that a little bit and this whole notion of risk, because in a way, when I talked to you just about this topic in general, you talked about at every phase of life, there's a series of questions that we ask ourselves. And you kind of, in thinking of that, some people take the risk to ask those questions at life's transitions, but even that can be a risk, and some people are very afraid of doing that. What kinds of questions would you ask yourself at certain transitional parts of your life that would help you move to the next one? I mean, what were you curious about? What questions do you ask?
Oh, you're going to look at me, Rob. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Well,
first of all, I was going to try
we're
not
getting
to-
into that good question.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, what the heck? It's a reevaluation of your life. Yeah. What am I doing? My work does not bring me any pleasure or joy, and it's stressing me out. So I think it's sometimes that just basic. And also, what do I want out of life? What is important to me? My family, their health, their well-being. And thinking back to risk, too, taking risk is good for all of us. It helps us to learn. And children need risk young so that when they get older and are going to come to these questions that are going to impact their life, they're going to know, oh, well, I climbed that tree long ago, I made it, or I flew at the circus. I can do this. I can make this life-changing decision to give up on this perhaps high-stress job and do this instead. But if we don't have practice taking risk as youngsters or have that opportunity, it's really scary then as an adult.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I was a very quiet kid. I was not the kind who was always looking for adventures and taking risks on purpose. But I knew that if I was going to get anything done or find out about myself or find out about the world, I would have to put myself out on that path of adventure, which is always risky, and you're always going to find trouble, and it's always uncomfortable. Every time I had to put myself into an uncomfortable place in order to get to another place. Like when I first ran away to the circus, I went over to Europe with $50 in my pocket. And
that was a risk.
Figured I'd hitchhike around and I would have maybe 2 or 3 days of money to survive until I found a circus to work with. And I was really uncomfortable doing that. You can imagine being on the plane. I was staring out the window on the plane thinking, what have I got myself into now?
That's a good question.
Yes, that is.
But the question was that I had no answer. I wasn't planning it. I said, well, I took the first step on that path of adventure, and now I have to leave it up to fate to have something's got to happen, one way or another. And every time I've done that, something good has come out of it. But it gets harder and harder the older I get to even think about doing something like that. It gets harder, doesn't it?
Well, and it's interesting, I was thinking, I don't think I have those life skills. I make decisions kind of radically. I remember my aunt was, Linda, why are you going to move to Vermont? I don't know if what about your teacher pension? I'm going to Vermont. I want to know what's happening there. So maybe it sounds like you didn't think through your European trip, right? This is just that curiosity. Let's see what happens, or willingness to take a risk.
Two more questions, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you, so be thinking there. Do you teach good question creation? Do you help young people think of, what are essential good questions? That seems to be foundational. Or is it just, that's a natural thing that happens in education?
Rob, do you mind?
Oh, go ahead.
The first thing I was going to say is, first of all, I'm still teaching myself how to ask open-ended questions that don't have that one right answer. We work a lot with educators to encourage them. Think about the questions. What are those questions that you want to ask that will open up for more questions? And so I feel for me, it's more working with myself, my peers, always trying to find those right questions. And then for children, they kind of naturally, What'll
have to work
happen if I
harder.
fill this all the way to the top? Oh, what if will happen if I do it again and again? So they'll just ask those questions until, again, we kind of box them out. Well, that's not the right question or the right answer. I don't know what you would say, Rob.
I like to find out what fascinates some kid, or some adult for that matter. You know, what were your fascinations when you were a kid, and what are they now? Meaning, what grabs your attention? And that's what I would send the kid off to study or find out more about on their own, instead of my giving them the answers. But what are you curious about is another way of saying, what's your fascination these days?
Someone came up to me last week and said, well, what about morbid curiosity? And not to get too much into the dark place, but a lot of popular media is about pretty morbid things, CSI and CSI and CSI, or whatever they are. Clickbait on when we are on our computers. Are things trying to get us to click on them by asking some question that basically to take us down kind of meaningless paths. When does curiosity become a distraction from important things? Or where do we create those limits? Because there is that media that's trying to get us curious about how to lose 5 pounds, or whatever it is.
I'm looking at you, Rob.
Like,
You go
really?
first on-
You're
you
asking
go
me
first on
this
morbid.
question? I mean, there's
Well,
a Pandora's
okay.
box. It's that dark side. And it's interesting that somebody came up and said, I'm interested in that piece.
Well, naturally, like I said, when we see a dead animal or feathers out in the field, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
That's a natural curiosity, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
What happened here?
Sure.
Oh, death, what's going on? But then I think you're speaking of another level.
I think that question talks about superficiality.
Yeah, distraction and
Distraction rather than curiosity that has a deeper meaning or a deeper metaphor. I just had a thought that I got distracted while you were saying. Yeah.
Well, that gets me to this. Your questions in this book, your essential questions, are pretty gosh darn interesting. That are hardly about distraction or frivolity at all. Who are we? Do you want to?
Well, it's so interesting.
But how did you even come up with these?
Some of the folks in this room helped come up with those. I remember Christy and I were sitting, it was a cold winter day. We had a swimming pool for an activity that was going to happen that weekend filled with corn that kids played in. And we took our socks off and we put our feet in that pool of corn, sat in the sun as it's shown in the window, and we're there. Oh, what are these questions? How do you really make them short and sweet that it can relate to an early childhood educator and young children? So they're pretty basic. Who are we? But that's a question we ask as adults too. And I told you I would not remember them. Who lives here? This is so early childhood. I remember a kid in kindergarten, he's probably 40 now. Kenny, where do you live? He goes, oh, just watch the weatherman tonight. He'll show you on the map. I'm there, well, could you be a little more specific? Yeah, it's down that road by the red truck. I'm there, okay, that's good. You see, that was a, he gave me the right answer for him.
Well, do you remember when we were kids writing in our notebooks in elementary school, where do you live? In your own notebook, you would put your name, your address, your city, your country, your continent, your planet, your solar system.
Oh, no, we didn't do that. I like your school.
Anybody? Do you remember that?
Yeah, there you go. Pretty cool. So
There are
the
two others.
questions were, who are we? Who lives here? How are we connected? And
What's happening?
Of course. And we're there now. What's happening but it is. That's what children, we want them to be aware of, be in tune. What's happening? Whether it's a new building going up. I remember when King Street, the school, I saw them maybe the day after there was a fire in Burlington. Oh, that was what was happening. A fire and the big fire trucks. So those were basic questions that we picked. And then throughout the seasons, explore those so that they realize that things change, whether who's living here, what's happening, and our connections. But those 4 little questions took a long time to whittle down to get to the meat of what we hoped teachers would find. Yes, I can do this in my class. Maybe not all of them. Maybe this year we'll just explore who are we.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll blindfold ourselves, and that would be fun.
Let me, I have more questions, but what are some of you curious about for these facilitators of wonder and curiosity who have really worked at a lot of this?
Well, we've been talking about kids, but everybody here are adults, grown-ups. So,
Oh, there's a question over there.
There's one, yes.
First of all, thank you both for being here, and thank you, Fran, for doing this series. I used to be a classroom math instructor, and I've had great success asking students, what do you want to learn? Put aside the textbook, put aside the required curriculum that the department makes me teach. What do you want to learn? And I've had adult students have great difficulty with that question, that they can't formulate what they want to know about math, because it's always been coming at them. They've never had a chance to come at it.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you folks, how successful have you been when you've asked the students you work with, what would you like to learn?
I never asked that question.
I encourage you to try it.
I like to observe instead of asking them in a teacherly kind of a way. I observe what they're interested in, and I would start doing things. And if they, especially with kids, I would never go up and approach kids necessarily with something I'm going to teach them. I would wait for them to come to me for some reason. I do that with animals too, with pets. You know, dogs, I don't immediately go up and try to pet a dog. I wait for them to come to me. If they're interested in me, then I'll play. But I teach the same way, basically. Is that? Yep.
It is a, well, go.
Well, and
Very good
sometimes
question.
in our adventure program, when you ask kids what do they want to learn, wow. I mean, you know, dinosaurs often come in there, of course, but it's always interesting what they answer.
And as we get older, high school students think, well, what do you want? You know, because they need to be ready for the test. Adults going through life, a lot of people a lot of my friends are in transition now, and they're going, what did I really love? What did I really want to know or learn that I let go of and need to return to? So these can be very powerful questions.
I find that the more I work with adults now and retired adults, is that the more I show them tricks and games that relate to childhood, the more fun they're having again. And I'm showing people tricks that they may have remembered when they were, or they may have done in school, but they forgot about. And suddenly they're having all kinds of fun again because they've forgotten what these games and tricks were.
Like what? Just one?
Like what? Well,
Because I love it. He does a workshop for grandparents to then share things with their grandchildren.
Oh,
for
yeah,
one,
I had
but
so
it could
much
be
fun
anybody,
doing that.
right? Go ahead.
well,
Sorry.
bubbles, for example. But before we get to anything like that, just something that's simple with your hands. Again, trying to figure out one hand and the other hand. I will demonstrate first. and then, so let's see. I put one thumb up in the air and I'm pointing to it with the other finger, with the index finger. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to switch, 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 switch. Okay, everybody. One thumb in the air and you're pointing to it. Start slow and look at your own thumb. Don't look at my thumb. And try to switch and see how fast you can go.
No. Turn off the
All
camera.
right.
When Rob
And why is that funny?
It was laughing for no reason.
When Rob and I met for the first time out on the sidewalk, I go, I'm worried doing this presentation with you because I'm afraid you're going to make us do cartwheels or stand on our head.
But isn't that
Or
a
do
curious
this.
thing? And you have to figure out how to do it, and you have to think about it, and you have to go slow, and wait a minute, this hand, and then this hand. So you're actually thinking about it, even though it's a little trick that has no philosophical purpose whatsoever. You want another one?
That's good. We'll get another question from here, and then
But
we'll
we'll
come
all
back
be
to another one.
practicing.
But if you practice enough, you could probably get it.
I'd actually like to go very philosophical.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Great.
Linda, I really liked those very essential questions that you were talking about. And I was down in Guatemala and working with some kids down there, and they had a way of approaching things, and they would ask, what does this one eat? And their mindset was like everything depends on each other. It's all interrelated, so that's how they define the world. What does this one eat? And a kid just blew me away because he, at one point, knew I was from a different culture, and he said, what does your God eat? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, everything eats. It was like, what nurtures, what feeds, what enlivens the holy? And, you know, so that's just kind of become one of those questions for me forever about when I'm ever in a situation, like, what is God eating here? They had an answer. You know, they, of course, they thought about it a lot. So, of course, God eats beauty. That's what keeps God alive.
Wow.
And just that relationship to the world and that way of seeing things. So, I mean, that's kind of my fundamental curiosity question when I'm in a situation is what is God eating here? What is feeding the holy? What is making this in line?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ed.
Yeah.
You know, so he just kind of threw those things on me. And
Can I relate to that for a second? I was just teaching some magic tricks to a 9-year-old kid. And I'm thinking, 9-year-olds, he's a little too young, and I don't want to teach him sleight of hand or anything like that. And then I realized what attracted me to magic tricks. It's not the trick or the method of doing it, but it's the metaphors, which, you know, the most important metaphor is that the universe is full of mysteries. And so that whenever I was doing a magic trick with this kid, I was looking to see if he had that momentary pause of wonder. Instead of, wait a minute, how do you do this and how do you move your hands? Instead of, he'd have that moment of wonder, which is the key thing. It's not how you do something, but what does it relate to in the universe?
it's that belief that this kind of thing still exists. That magic can happen. That fundamental belief that there is we all have this belief that there is some world that is different than what is right here, and somehow it's better. You know, it's Narnia, or it's Hogwarts, or it's something that's a little different, or you know, and being able to keep that rapture and that ability to believe in that is what I think keeps the curiosity alive, as opposed to the systems that you're talking about, which want to give you an answer so you can be safe. You know, so you don't have to keep that anxiety of thinking about what is possible. You have the known. So I love that when you do magic and the kids are all that they just want to have that one moment of yes, it's real.
And that one moment of not having to need an explanation. You know, they're face to face with the inexplicable. And that's a beautiful moment. You don't have to have all the answers to everything in life.
But be open to it.
Be open to it. I think again of my mentor, Marcel Marceau, who one of his definitions of mime was this. He said, mime is the identification with the essence of all things and the portrayal of human nature through silent physical expression. That's a mouthful. But again, I remember other students who were there in his classes, and they were we were all learning technique, but it wasn't the techniques of movement that was so important to me. I would be watching Marceau and thinking, well, why is he doing these things? Not how is he doing it, but that explanation for me, he would say, when you're going to pick up, say, a glass of water, you pick up a glass of water in mime and you're going to drink this glass of water, you're drinking from the glass of the water of life. And so suddenly it had more weight to it. It's like, you're drinking. You could just pick up a glass and good enough, and pantomime is enough. But for Marceau, it was a deeper kind of experience. It was a metaphor for how to look at the world in a deeper metaphorical kind of way. It's metaphysics, which for me is what curiosity is all about. We don't have to have all the answers to what we're curious about, do we?
Well, I think that's so interesting because they're the curious kids who want to know how to do it. But there's this much deeper curiosity where the questions are different, and what you're looking for and experiencing and hoping to, what you were hoping to get from
and that's like a
Marceau.
magic trick. There's two kinds of people. If somebody sees a magic trick, they're the people who react, well, wait a minute, how do you do that? I'm going to figure that out. Here's how you do it. I think you did it this way. And I say, oh, okay, he has a scientific mind. That kid will be a scientist. Good. Then there are other ones who say, wow, how'd you do that? What else can you do? They just have this wonder about it, but they don't need. Let's see more, right? Let's see more magic. Right.
Thank you. Another question. Did you see someone? Yes. Please.
Is this started when you talked about coming to Vermont and that was your curiosity about Vermont. And I'm a 10-year resident, and what I experience all the time here is the creativity of people just generally, the entrepreneurism, the various kind of creative acts that aren't, they're not in the fine arts necessarily area, but they're just the way people do things. And I think landscape, I think the landscape of Vermont has a lot to do with this. And you were talking about nature and the importance of that. I just wondered specifically, maybe you could both talk about, because I think you're both, I don't know, and neither one of you are native to this state, but there's something that's magical about this particular landscape that we live in, that we assume, we don't take it for granted. I don't know anybody who takes it for granted, and I just wondered what you thought about that aspect of how nature creates curiosity. If you grow up in this landscape, are you more curious? Are you more inventive? Are you more creative?
Just speaking for myself, we were just talking, Caroline, about New Zealand and how, it's a lot like Vermont, but surrounded by ocean. But, and I was in Ireland not too long ago, and I felt a great connection. But as a kid growing up in Pittsburgh, outside of the city, I guess doesn't take much to get me going, whatever. I was just in Florida, and just some of the places we would find. Then we were in North Carolina. So for me, Vermont holds a special place in my heart, and it is beautiful, but I'm pretty much open to all landscapes.
Rob?
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. Though I might add, I grew up in Connecticut, and I remember that little hill where I was following that cloud, or trying to follow that cloud. And I just thought, well, in Vermont, there are more opportunities to climb hills and look at those clouds.
Yeah.
I needed the open spaces. And when I was going to start Circus Smirkus, all my professional friends said, well, come on, Rob, let's go to Los Angeles, or let's go to New York or Chicago, where there's money and there's backing. And I said, see you later, I'm going up to Vermont.
Had you been here before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it was a nutty idea to try to start a circus in the middle of the boondocks with cows, And so I started to think I'd put cows in the circus. Why not? But so you never know what's going to come out of any landscape if you're curious enough.
Well, it is curious that Vermont does draw people, and what is that all about? Maybe that's a topic for another year. Yes.
We had an example at Boyd Groton last night of how curiosity makes an older person alive. I can't remember his name because I was just fascinated about how he oozed enthusiasm. He was coming through Vermont, going on to perhaps some kind of job, and he got fascinated about the State House. And his wonder and his joy of refurbishing the State House just came through and made a marvelous experience for every one of us. And it's really exciting when you see an adult that finds something that turns them on.
Yeah, get so passionate about.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And then they start asking all of those questions like a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's the way he was. He just made us excited too.
that's wonderful, thank you.
Do we have some time left?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. We have a little bit of time. Yes, we do. Go ahead, you have another thing to.
No, I'm just curious if anybody would like to see Fran Stoddard pull a tablecloth out from under plates and dishes. Anybody? We could save that for the end,
Okay.
Just in case.
just in case.
Just in case. Okay.
Look at she's worried.
So before we get to that moment, and I'm game, okay. What is the big question that still continues to intrigue you, that gnaws at you? What's a big question that's out there for you?
I mean, what we're curious about?
Yeah. What's one of those big questions, or not? It'll be a little question. There's some questions, we kind of talked about answerable and unanswerable questions. Of course, the scientists like to ask answerable questions. That was really important to him, and very, it's a scientific way of looking at things. He wanted answerable, and some questions are answerable and some are really not. And not that a big question is answerable or not answerable, but is there one that continues to work you or inspire you even?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to go?
No, you go first. I'm wrestling with 2.
Yeah, I'm wrestling with 2 exactly.
We'll go for 2.
Well, there's the big question, and then there's something that's been on my mind because I'm really curious about it lately. And I had not intended to talk about this, and I have not talked publicly about this yet. But I've been diagnosed with early Parkinson's. But I found that I'm totally curious, and that's the word I've been using for myself. How come this hand, again, relating to the ambidexterity, how come this hand is not quite up to what this hand is doing? And the word is curious because even doing this thing, I could do it, but not quite as well as I used to unless I think about it. So it's the process of thought that makes me able to do it, which is really curious. So if you're walking along the street and suddenly I realize I'm not swinging my left arm, as soon as I think about it, then it's working. So because I'm a movement guy and I'm trained with movement, I find this really curious. I'm fascinated by the whole process of how to make the brain make the body work and what part of the brain is tied in through the neural system, et cetera. So I'm finding it curious as a movement person how to make things work. So this is what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
I'm very curious.
I bet.
At this point, it's a curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. The workings of
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Things work. Wow.
I've just been really curious about dying lately. I have no diagnosis or anything, but I have several friends who do, and I'm curious about how to have conversations about it, how to embrace it, how to make it better, for lack of another word. But so I'm very curious about how do you help, how do I myself approach death and what I want to do. So that's pretty heavy duty. My other one is how can we save the world? So that's a lot easier. So those are the
Piece
two
of
I'm
cake.
working on,
Piece of
folks.
cake.
Well, if you don't have the questions, the answers will never come.
I know.
Just one more from the audience? Anything else with these fabulous people? Yes, sir.
Rob, a discussion a while back that I was involved with was about humor. What is humor? And how do you recognize humor? And it comes down to certain having an aha moment when something doesn't quite match, a discontinuity. And to embrace that, as you were saying, the wonder of it. And I'm wondering if you were to define humor and put that alongside a definition of curiosity, would you come out somewhat the same, or how would you play with that?
Well, my first impulse is to say, no, they're not quite the same. They're maybe on parallel planes, but a little bit different level. I recently was asked to do a workshop on what makes us laugh. So I went down there, this was in Woodstock, and I thought, I don't really want to go down there and start analyzing humor too much. Let's see what makes these people laugh without them knowing about it. Even when we were doing just this, the whole room was laughing. Why were you laughing? So and there's so many different types of laughter that brings on laughter, different kinds of humor, surprise, slapstick, whatever it is. I like to refer to a quote by E.B. White, who was such a great writer. He said, trying to analyze humor, he said, is like dissecting a frog. Few people are interested in it, and the frog dies of it. So, whatever, take that as you will, but the idea of what humor is all about is a large discussion, but I think it's a little bit different than curiosity. What do you think?
Another potential topic
And
for another series.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this seems like such an obvious question, but how do we make sure we continue to be curious, to be engaged, to take the risk, to ask these bigger questions? Just do it is easy. It's easy enough to say just do it, but what are your thoughts about how do you just continue to stay on it, to stay curious, to not panic when you get a diagnosis, but to be, what's happening? What's going on here?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with remembering not to take ourselves so seriously. Otherwise, life just gets to be too hard. That's one thing. And the other is to remember to play rather than to be so competitive. Instead of playing ping pong or tennis and counting points and what the score is and who's winning, just play without any points, without any scoring. Play should be non-competitive in my mind. And then suddenly it's a lot more fun and things come out of that.
Well, and I would add on to that, play with kids. Not with an agenda, not with an adult agenda, and where do they lead you? Observe them. What are they doing? I was visiting a friend's grandchild for the first time, and I didn't think anything of it, and because I was flat on their floor, laying in the dining room on the floor, and Suzanne goes, Linda, what is underneath that chair? I've never looked at it. But because her baby was on the floor, so that's where I'm going to be. So if we follow your grandchildren, your children, and I know as an adults and grandparents and parents, we have a lot of stuff going on, but you have to take time and play, but let your kids be the leader. They will help you recapture that joy. But I would also say take away all their electronics too when you play. I have found with my twin grandnieces, okay, we're not going to have electronics right now. But I feel that, we become very, here's all the right answers on my little iPad or my phone. But, so we don't have to worry about knowing right answers. We can get that with technology. But we have to be creative, we have to be curious, we have to be open to problem solving and to working together. And so I just feel like it's really critical that we help to nurture and grow curiosity. And I think the best way to do that is model it too, and play.
And just to follow up just quickly with that before we finish, it seems that people are going there more, that people are more open to what you're talking about, that educators, and we have a lot here today, are more open to being freer with curiosity and letting the children guide their own education on some level. And that seems to be a good thing.
I have
Yeah.
found when I moved to Vermont, another thing I love about it, it's very kid-friendly. You know, wherever you go, there's so many things. Circus Smirkus it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Wow, a circus for kids? How cool is that? But that, Vermont especially, I think, has more of those tendencies than other places I've visited lately.
Thank you all very much. I think this has been very special, Rob. And I've got to do this
yes.
thing. Okay, so what am I doing here?
Well, you want to stick around
Isn't
and
this
see
for me? Is that for me?
Are we going to leave the flowers?
You wonder what this is?
Yeah, of course I'm curious about what this is. Isn't
Open
it
it up.
beautiful? It's just a note.
Oh.
Curious.
And
You got
were-
me.
I got you. Okay, well, I'll show you how to do this.
All right. Oh, good, you're going to do it. We put that there.
Suddenly the room has gotten very quiet.
Okay.
Okay. You can keep that. All right.
This is Rob's special tablecloth.
Can you get up with that wire on?
I can. Do I have to do the no
Let's see, maybe we'll do it this way.
handstands?
I'll show you what to do first.
Okay.
Oh, good, he brought his own things.
First we'll just use, well, no, we won't even use a plate. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to grab the two corners of this in
Okay.
a nice fist.
Yeah?
And you're not going to pull up. You're not going to pull straight back, which is the tendency. You're going to remember to pull straight down to the floor.
Oh,
So you get
okay.
in your mind, straight down and fast.
Okay.
So it's down and fast, like that. Straight down, not towards you.
Okay.
You can do it,
Okay, you
Fran.
can do that?
Okay.
Try that first.
Okay.
Okay.
You guys can come up here later. I'm sure that Rob will stay around.
Straight down, right? Okay.
Ooh. Oh, now it's going to get good.
I picked the right lady here.
It's always about the other people. This is like nerve-wracking. Okay.
Let's try it for now, just with a plate and
Thanks for staying, everybody. This is what's keeping people here. You're curious? I am too, right?
some silverware
Oh my God.
and maybe a glass.
You can do this at home. You're learning all the tricks. Let's see if it works. So,
Okay, what are you going to do?
down. Corners,
Down. Get in,
down,
down and fast. Get into your mind down,
down.
down, down,
Right.
down.
Oh! Awesome! That was so
Put that back on again.
Oh,
One more
I'm doing
time.
this at home. My goddaughters, okay.
Okay. Let's do this. Plate, some silverware.
Didn't I do it? Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh. Oh.
Let's do this.
Why is this funny? Yeah. Why?
And
Oh!
just for fun.
You can edit this out.
Okay, let's.
The pressure's on.
Do you want to do this, or
Fran.
should I do this?
You don't trust me to do this?
Okay.
You're teaching. I'm
Yes.
your student.
What are you going
Should
to
I
do?
do it?
How are you going to pull it?
Down, fast.
Yeah. You know, I've done this 100 times, but each time I get down to do it, there's always that moment of,
Do you want to do it? You want to do
Come
it?
on, don't tell her that.
Does Linda
You
wanna
can
do
do
it?
it, Fran. You can do it. No, you can do it.
You're getting nervous. You don't think I can do it?
I think you could do it for
I can-
sure.
Okay.
Because
Should
you've
I
had
do it?
experience already. You just did it.
You've done it. You can do it.
Just nice and down.
Oh!
Thank you, Rob Mermin and Linda Wellings,
that
and
was
everybody for coming here
awesome.
today.